Okay, so welcome back to video number 4. We're going to talk about best freelancer sites. Now, this is going to be a fairly short video because I'm just going to talk about what has worked for us and some guidelines that you can use when you're looking for other freelancer sites. And feel free to test other sites. This is just something that works for us. We have used Upwork.com and also known as Odesk.com and Elance.com. We've used this site for the last decade and it's been great. It's been wonderful. And yes, we found people on there that didn't work, but we found a lot of people that have worked. So the reason why I like Upwork is specific reasons, and I'll jump right in and talk about that. I like them because they have escrow. And what that means is that you can put your money kind of into a holding place so that the person that is working for you can see that you have paid, and it's kind of a mediator, and they can see for their sake and for their safety that you have paid and you have put your money there, and then when the work is done and you've checked everything, you can release the money to them. I like that because it's a win-win situation for both the programmer and for you, or the freelancer and for you. And you want that. You want to make sure that it is a win-win situation for the programmer and the freelancer and for you. You never want to find a site that is only good for you and not the programmer and the freelancer. Or you never want to find a site that is only good for the freelancer and not for you. All right. So that's kind of a good indication of a good site, freelancer site out there. Never ever pay a programmer before they have completed the work. I've made this mistake, even paying half up front, and even people that I know really well, I've paid up front and it never really works out. And the reason being, if you really think about it, is because anytime somebody pays you up front, then you're less likely to work hard for that money, right? So this has never ever worked. I've hired programmers that I knew for decades and paid them up front, and then it never worked because they already have the money in hand. Why do they have to work for it? All right. And during your sake, it's not a win-win situation in that case. So make sure that you never pay a programmer before they have completed the work. It just saves you time. It makes everything work out. Always use sites that offer escrow. Like I said, having that mediation so that it's a win-win situation for you and the programmer. Now, some sites don't. And while you might find a great programmer, you run the risk of losing money. And that's why I said I knew a guy, for example, I knew several people for half a decade, and these guys programmed for me and I gave them money up front. And a lot of times they were not willing to work for the money. And that's just general human psychology in general, is just that if somebody pays you up front, you're less inclined to work hard, right? Always use sites that allow programmers to be transparent. And what I mean by that is that you want to be able to communicate with them, you want to private message them, and allows them to be themselves, to show their resume, to show their feedback and all of that. It's got to be a win-win situation for both sides. Always use sites that allow for mediation in case of fraud or being ripped off. Meaning, in the case, let's say a programmer develops your program, you've paid them and they stole your idea. They've only done kind of a half job. And you want to have that mediation that you can go to just in case. I've gone to sites where there are zero mediation. Great people there who are applying for jobs, but no mediation, no escrow, and just being ripped off all the time. So always use sites that protect both the programmer and yourself. All right. So for example, if you decide to hire somebody on Craigslist, for example, you might find a good person there, but there's no mediation, no escrow. There's none of that. So you run the risk. Yes, you might find somebody who's good, but at the end of the day, you run the risk of having like 80, 90% being ripped off. And I mean, if you think about most people who buy stuff on Craigslist, who are selling it or buying it, a lot of people get ripped off. You hear stories of people trying to buy cars and getting killed, you know? So this is kind of a Wild West. Do you want to be in the Wild West, fighting for the best programmer, or do you want to be in more of a actual company who's, you're able to find people and, go from there? So think of it that way, and I think it'll just make more sense. All right. So let's move on to video number 4 and talk about research, which is basically what we need to do is we need to research programmers that we're looking for to get a better idea of how we can later on create the best job post so we can attract the right person.